We need to find this place or we'll be late.
Make a left on Astrology Avenue. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant right. It should be right here at 444 Spirit Way. Oh, turn!
It looks like Renee. Yay, we're on time.
The James and Kelly Show.
Great, let's start the show.
Okay,
that's the exciting part of the show. But we have a special guest.
We have a special guest. So Elena Rayo has two main passions in life, healing and music. She is a medical Qigong instructor for 12 years and is a licensed practitioner. Elena is also a lifelong musician on violin and guitar, a self-taught singer who has released 6 albums and performed internationally. She owns an analog recording studio called Ancient Wave Studios.
Mm-hmm.
Her education includes degrees in classical languages from Berkeley, Cambridge, and UCLA. And she lives now in a small mountain town in Northern California, but she's from Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome, Elena Rayo.
Yay, Elena. Hi, Elena. Welcome.
Thank you.
Have you here.
So happy to be with you both.
Oh my gosh, we have so many questions for you. You have such a fascinating background, but let's start with how did you get into Qigong?
Yeah. Or what was your very beginning
background?
of your interest in spirituality or that sort of thing?
You know, when I was a kid, my parents were hippies. They met at the Human Being in San Francisco on LSD. So
oh, how funny!
Classic story of the '60s. And I grew up for a short time on a commune in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And then my parents realized they couldn't make any money. So my dad went back to school, got his PhD, and got a job at the University of Wisconsin. That's why we moved to Madison. But he was always very interested in esoteric things. So the walls of the library in the house were lined with those astral travel and all kinds of things like that. And so even as a young kid, I would read those books and practice astral traveling, things like that. And then, as you do, you grow up and get a teenager and you kind of forget about all that kind of thing because your parents are crazy, right? And you want to move on into becoming your own person.
Yeah.
And so got into music and other things and schooling and all of that. But I think that at a certain point in my life, it started to come back in as it does, right? It always finds you again.
Sure.
And I got into tarot reading, which was, I had a teacher for 20 years learning how to do readings. And that was great. And I enjoyed that. It was mostly for myself, really. But it was interestingly the stage thing that really got me into Qigong because I had the worst stage fright.
Really?
It was so difficult for me to go in front of people. I would literally have these panic attacks and my voice would seize up and my fingers would shake and
it's the number one fear, by the way.
Number one.
I believe that because
death is too.
It's crippling, it stopped me from having a real classical career in music and violin because I couldn't get beyond that. I couldn't solo in front of people. I was fine in an orchestra, but so I had a friend who was a teacher named Linda Burquez, and she was teaching Qigong, and I never heard of that. But she said, it's really going to help you be grounded. And I was like, okay, great. Sign me up. So I started studying with her, and I found, sure enough, that it brought me back to childhood where I realized that there's such things as energy fields and that there's a connection to the earth and to the heavens, and that it's not just this body, right? It's this whole other energetic anatomy that exists within us. And I found this is it for me. This is how I get to become who I really am. So I went on to study at the International College of Medical Qigong with Bernard Shannon. And that's where I got my certification and became a teacher and practitioner because I found it was really true. It completely changed my life. I was able to be a grounded person. I was able to not be so empathic, take on people's energies. I stopped being such a pleaser. All the things that were survival strategies that I had developed being so porous I found like I could really inhabit my own space and my own dimensionality. And then when I would go on stage, I was able to keep those fields of protection up. And it really was a total game changer for me. So I was able to go on stage. I was able to sing in front of people. And I'm so grateful for my teachers because they really helped me so much.
Let me ask a quick interest just came into my head, if you don't mind. So how long ago was that when you went on stage with the Qigong? About 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
I would say, no, it was about maybe 13 years ago.
Okay. And when
I first started.
When you went on, like, this is about curiosity, you felt your own energy atmosphere as you were out on there. Did you ever feel the audience's atmosphere? And being a performer, I was wondering if you also feel that, or does that influence in some way?
Of course. And I'm sure you both know,
totally.
Very familiar with that is I had no idea.
Your experience, I would think, right? It enhances the whole atmosphere for you.
It's so intense, right? Because people are throwing these projections at you. And if you don't have those ability to keep yourself safe inside your own bubble, I think that's what would happen is I would just take on other people's fears and projections, just magnify it, right? And it was only until I learned, and it did take a few years to really get the training down. So I would say I only really became comfortable performing, well, even just a few years ago, really. And then I was able to not have to take on the audience's energy. And I still, to this day, every time after performance, I smudge myself, I take a salt bath so that I'm not absorbing what people's projections are. Because I think it's very important to keep our feels.
What level is it, do you think, of believing in self first? Do you have to believe in yourself stronger and stronger, or does it come with the Qigong, or is it one and the same?
Wow, what a great question.
Because I would think believing in yourself builds up that power and that strength and the confidence to go out on stage, yeah?
Right. It's kind of like a feedback loop. Like the more you feel your own energy, the more comfortable you can be, the more relaxed you are, the more people can relate to you. And then that helps to increase the confidence.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Elena, for people that don't know what Qigong is, can you explain that to people?
Yeah. Well, literally the word Qigong, Qi is life force energy, prana, right? It's the thing that flows through everything in the universe. And Gong means skill or cultivation. So it's the cultivation of energy, of your life force energy. And it's a practice that there's thousands of kinds of Qigong, and they have developed from thousands of years ago. The lineage that I have studied, it goes all the way back to Lao Tzu. And he was as some people may know, he was a warrior who at a point in his life decided he was going to rededicate all his warrior training into becoming a healer, basically to atone for all of the harm that he had caused as being a warrior. So he developed these practices, which were until very recently secret practices. They were developed and kept in monasteries. The Shaolin monks are a large part of the lineage that I've studied. And so it was not available to anyone outside of those traditions, those secret traditions. And the way that it came to me, of course, women, of course, were not part of that as well. And my teacher, Bernard Shannon, he was called to China because all of the Qigong practices were being basically systematically destroyed by the Chinese government because they wanted to go into Western medicine. So these teachers said, we need to bring this to the West. We need to find someone who can be a vehicle and receptacle. He was one of, he wasn't the only one, but of this particular lineage, they called him in. He had been a military guy and he had done some martial arts training, and they said, you're the guy. And so he became like he and another partner, his other teacher, became the receptacles of this knowledge. So it's kind of a long way of introducing it, but essentially what it is, it's very simple movements that we can do. They're very easy, but they're very efficient, and they're designed to do two things. The first is to remove stagnation, which is blocks of energy that are in our fields or inside the body. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, we bring in positive, fresh energy in the form of light. And so the sound is actually what removes the blocks, and light brings in the positive chi. And so by this combination of these two aspects, which there's many different movements that we can do, they allow us to have a greater degree of health and vibrancy. And particularly the ones that work in the medical Qigong field, it really is oriented towards really knowing the inner anatomy, the physical anatomy, but also the energetic anatomy. And by really being able to do that, we develop the sight, the third eye sight, to be able to see energy fields, as well as, in my case, everyone has a little bit different. You both probably know this as well, that you develop these other abilities. And for me, mine is like clairaudience. So I hear things and messages through my inner left ear.
So will you hear when, let's say the heart chakra, there's a density there with emotional blockage. Will you hear emotional blockage, or we hear exactly what that blockage is?
Well, when I'm a practitioner working on another person, for me, it's usually a combination of being able to feel it with my hands, because, I have these energy centers called the Lao-Gong in our hands. And then at the same time, I often get a message inside from saying, you had this experience, you were 5 years old, and you were, told to stop what you were doing, or blocked in some way from your heart connection. Wow. So I'll get messages about people in that kind of way.
You must do a lot of forgiveness practice with these people. I'm sure probably it comes up all the time.
Forgiveness is huge, because it's the highest vibration, right? Where we can allow ourselves to, self-forgiveness is, I think, the number one thing I teach is self-forgiveness and self-love, because without that, there's no really deep healing.
Right.
We have to have that flow of energy from the heart. In Qigong, we say the heart is the ruler of our being. It's the wisest part of ourself. And the brain isn't even in the top 10 aspects of who we are. So, all the organs are portals, basically dimensional portals to emotional aspects of ourselves, spiritual aspects of ourselves. And when we have physical illness, it's because over time, from the spiritual field, the third outer field, to the emotional field, the second field, finally makes its way into the physical. So really, to have physical healing, we need to address the other levels.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it's very true. Wow. You've had so many different experiences. And besides Qigong, can you talk about the near-death experiences you shared, or the UFOs? Pick one.
Yeah, you've had so many fascinating life experiences here.
Well, when I was in college, a friend and I were taking a road trip, and we went through Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
We're going to visit my brother, who was living in Arizona at the time. And it was a very strange experience. We came in about midnight, and so it was, very dark and quiet. And as we were driving through the road, there's this one road that goes through Joshua Tree, right? And at a certain point, we saw a very strange animal walking across the road, and I could still see it so clearly. I was in my early 20s, and it was we called it a stag pig. It kind of looked like a stag body with like a kind of like a pig head, and had these really intensely strange eyes. And we slowed down because we saw it coming across the road. And as it was coming into the middle of the road, we could stop the car. We could see it in the headlights, and it turned and it looked at its face towards us and had these really trippy eyes. And that was the last thing I remember. And then the next thing I know, we are both outside the car. The doors are open. We're in another part of the park. We were turned around in another direction, and 3 hours had elapsed. What? We got back into the car, and it was 3 a.m. And I to this day, I have no idea what happened. I can't explain it. My friend can't explain it.
You know what? I want to tell you something. I completely forgot about this, but James, I swear to God, maybe 20 years ago, I was driving in that same exact area, the one road in, and I was by myself. And I said to myself, "Oh, I want to go check this out. I've never been there, And it's everybody who don't know this area. Who doesn't know, it's near out near Palm Springs area, right? Kind of headed out in that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was headed north. So I went in from east, west. Yeah, no, east. I was headed east to Palm Springs. And I went in to this area, and next thing I know, 3 hours went by and I was south, or I was west. I don't know what happened. I can't explain what happened, I didn't see a pig. I didn't see any of that. But all of a sudden, if time had gone like this and I was in the other direction, there's something, I'll never forget that. I don't know how to explain it.
I
Wow,
asked both of you
amazing.
the same question. And first, of course, Elena, with you, do you notice any changes like years later from that experience you think might have come from that experience that maybe that you're living, or an insight you have now that maybe came from that experience, or not really?
It was interesting because I actually forgot about it for a while. Like, and it was triggered by something later, which was I started noticing, well, being able to see certain things like in the sky. Like I would just my attention would be called up and I would see, as you do, like these weird ships, or who knows what they are. I don't know if they're military or ETs or what. And other times like being followed by silent crafts. And
so your perception's opened a little bit, maybe.
Exactly. That's all I can really say. I don't know.
Kelly, you similar?
100% the same thing. And also, I talk about star seeds all the time.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't had that experience, and I honestly had forgotten, I must have just put that experience somewhere else. Poor Linda, if she's watching, I didn't put that in the book. but it's a real thing that happened. And I don't know if it's that area. It's got to be that area.
Must be.
So the minds, the core and the ground, and so forth. Wow, that's pretty amazing. And you also had near-death experience you had. Did you have a near-death experience, Elena, or no?
I wouldn't say near death exactly. No.
Okay.
No, mostly just, what
about your floating? Like feeling you're floating around?
The floating?
Near-death experience in a way. You're still, you're floating out of your body. You felt that before?
Oh, yeah.
And does it happen occasionally, or can you do it consciously, or how does that work?
Yeah. Now I can do it pretty consciously, because that was also part of the Qigong training, is that we have an eternal soul. Like that's a very big part of the teaching. And while I always kind of thought that, or just thought, of course, but when I really got into the deep training, that I realized like, it's very specific. It's not just like, woo woo. It's like, there's this actual eternal soul, and it's housed in the Tai Chi pole, the center line of your body, and it can go in and out of the head. And so part of the training is you're learning how to work that. And because you're preparing for your own death, you're preparing for your own passing. And part of the training is to every day meditate on your own death and practice this technique so that you are not afraid when it happens. You're just familiar. It's like you're almost, creating that internal landscape, I think. And
is this what happened with your husband? Is he had a fear of death, as I recall, an existential fear of death?
It did seem like that. And I was thinking about this morning, when it'll be 1 year that he passed on May 16th.
Wow.
Oh, so tell us about this.
Tell us about this experience.
Yeah, it was, I'd never been with someone as they were crossing over before. It was a totally new thing. And it was a long drawn out, he had cancer, and he was in incredible amounts of pain. He had a tumor on his spine. It was very, very difficult to, witness. I'm sure you both know, like, to see someone in that much pain, and trying to find a way spiritually, to navigate it, and inside myself to also maintain my own strength as you're going through, medicating someone with more pain.
And to release him, that it's okay to go.
Yeah. So I did have some help. Some people came into our lives. His daughter Ramona and his sister Myra were also, the three of us were his caretakers in the last few months of his life. And so grateful to them, because, we had every hour, like all 24/7, had to be administering something or helping him try to get comfortable. And he did have this fear. He had this, I don't know, it was like a vision or something. He kept saying he was so afraid that he was in a body bag. Like, it was like he kept seeing himself in a body bag, and then he was falling out of a van and by the side of the road. And he had this terror of this experience happening. And so we reassured him that there was no way he was going to be in a body bag, that we were going to keep his body on dry ice for 3 days. We were going to do this whole honoring ceremony. We were going to drive him ourselves to the mortuary to be cremated. Like, we, really tried to make it so that whatever the fear would be mitigated. And it did seem like it ultimately, he came to that place of peace. And he went to a coma, but even when he was in a coma for a few days, we would just keep reiterating how much it was really that we're honoring him or taking care of him. And some of the things that the death doulas who came, he said, at a certain point, you stop touching people on their bodies, except at the crown of the head, because you want the soul
To leave out.
to leave there. You don't want them to leave in other parts, where you have, which was really hard, because you want to touch and the person you love, especially, it's not going to be for long that they're still here. And so I got to really, it helped with my training, but also viscerally to really experience it. And when he did finally go, I brought in the Tibetan Book of the Dead teachings because I had always been really interested in that. And I followed them to the letter. And if you're familiar with that book, of course.
Can you tell our audience that don't know about it, what the Tibetan Book of the Dead is?
It's basically a manual to help the soul, kind of starting right before the moment of death, through the moment of death, and then guiding for many days afterwards to help the soul navigate the bardos, the different challenges and things that the souls face before they finally cross over the rainbow bridge.
Different levels, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very powerful because you read them aloud, in a loud voice to the spirit. And this is why we wanted to have his body there for 3 days, because they say that the soul goes in and out for about 3 days. I know in some traditions, that's why you cremate the body within 6 hours, because you don't want the soul to be going in and out of the body. But this was very specific. You turn the body on the side and you tap really on the top of the head, and you really basically guide the soul out of the body. And then you have these readings that you do every day, at least once a day, sometimes multiple times a day. And it's very specific. It tells you exactly what to do. And it says, now you're coming to the place, now you're seeing this deity. Now you're seeing this color light. You're seeing a dull light and you're seeing a bright light. You're going to want to go to the dull light because it's familiar and comfortable. But if you go to this dull light, you're going to be reincarnated and you're going to be facing the similar issues. So each day there's a different pathway that the soul faces. And each time you're always supposed to choose the bright light. And in Saul, my husband's case, it was on the 4th day, we drove his body through town. We had the whole processional, like everyone from town came out, and we had put it in his 1954 GMC truck in the back and decorated with flowers and really made it a ceremony. And we took him to the mortuary and we put him in his casket into the crematory. And it was the day, each day also has a different element. And it was the day of fire, just happened to be the 4th day. And say, go to the red light, ignore the dull blue light. If you go to the blue light, you will be reincarnated into a form of suffering. And the red light, choose the bright red light, even though it is fearful and even though it is intense. And right then, as I felt his spirit just go whoosh, right through, and he just went up to the next place. And his daughter, in the car, we actually took a photograph, and there was this giant ball of red light. You could see it passing by the car as they're outside. It was truly amazing. This was all confirmed later by a Buddhist monk who read some teachings for him, his soul, and said, he got there, and the fire helped him go. It was so many different ways that was really reaffirmed. And I just felt like that book is really powerful, and it really helped.
I have had no experience with that book at all. Have you, James?
I haven't. I read it years ago, 25 or 30 years ago, but I haven't used it for a ceremony or no.
Wow. Must have been a very powerful experience for you. How were you emotionally through that? How did you handle that?
I felt like that book it gave me so much hope because it was so specific, and it made me feel like, okay, here's what you do. There's something you can do, and you're helping, and you're in communication. And it was at this point, after he was able to cross over, that then I was able to start communicating with him. So then I was able to start hearing his voice.
Wow. Tell us about that.
So at first it was just, you know, the things that you expect, the reassurances and thank you so much. You did everything right. You know, everything was perfect. You know, thank you for the honoring of my body. And then it got to be more interesting when a friend taught me about this flotation tanks.
Sure.
Are you familiar with those? Where you go in, it's basically like Kelly, have you ever?
I've never done it.
They're
No.
wild. They're
Have you done it, James?
I have. Yeah.
Gosh. You want to explain
like
what that is?
It's an isolation tank, essentially. You're in a very super salinated water that's warm. It's blood temperature, and it's completely dark. And so you float because there's so much salt you can't sink. You just float.
And you put earplugs on if you do.
Yeah, earplugs. There's no sound. There's no light. You don't feel anything because you're just floating. It's like you're floating in space. It's amazing, actually. I really recommend it. It's very deeply healing.
It's pretty good
For the nervous system. And what I found was because there was no external thing, like all of a sudden I would hear Saul really clearly, and he was coming through, and I was like, oh, hi, you know? And he's like, and then he really started to lay it towards me because I was in so much, of course, grieving and shock. We were very, very close, you know, like twin souls, people had said. And he showed me early on that he said, there's a portal in your heart. And I have a portal in my heart. Even though I'm on the other side, he's like, I'm right here. I'm right here next to you. I'm just literally like, it's just a membrane. And all you need to do is open the portal of your heart. And I'm opening the portal of my heart. And we can communicate like this anytime. And I was like, this is great. So we did. So I would do this once a week, and we would have a date. And he would tell me all kinds of things, like how to fix the solar panel that's malfunctioning, or, you know, stuff around the property. Like, you need to call so-and-so, you need to do this. And then I was doing some performances at the time because I needed something to focus on. So I turned to music as being like my kind of salvation. And Saul loved Joni Mitchell. It was his favorite songwriter.
Totally.
And he had singing a lot of her songs while he was passing. He would ask over and over again, please sing those songs. And so I did a tribute show to her where it was 21 songs of her music from the very beginning to later, and started solo and then added a band kind of thing. And he was so excited about this. From the other side, he was coaching me through this performance.
Wow.
He told me exactly what to wear. He told me the order of the set list. The musicians to play with, what the stage should look like. I mean, he had it. This is how he was in life, right? He was very, he was an amazing musician and performer himself. And he was a real visionary with performances, much more than I was. But he's like, I'm going to do this. We're going to do this together. I'm going to be inside of you. We're going to do this together. And James and Kelly, I tell you, I was like an okay singer before, like, could kind of sing. But after he passed and he started coming into me, like this whole other dimension of my voice came in. It was like he was now helping me to sing. He was inside of me. And he would have me rehearse these shows, like he would literally have me go like an athlete, like they do sometimes. You go through the race, in your mind over and over again, like you rehearse it to kind of train, I don't know, all of this, right? So he would have me do that, come out on stage, pick up that guitar. It's right there. You're going to start this song. And he would have me do it in real time over and over again. And so then when I came to do the actual performance, I was just right there. Wow. It was like able to flow through so completely and beautifully. And then later we had a tribute to his own music because he was a really well-known band leader and had a lot of his own albums. And so that was part of the tribute, is we wanted to have a whole show of his music.
I wonder through you that way then. That makes sense.
It was so amazing. He was like, okay, here's what I want you to wear. Now you have to come on in my clothing.
Oh my gosh.
All his clothing. And he's like, start with this song, do this. And, it was like that. And so now it's like we have this collaborative relationship. And it's gotten easier over time because now it's kind of like I can hear him right now. Like he's like, you go, babe, this is great. We're getting it out there to the world. And he's given me so many messages of powerful possibility. He said, first of all, a lot of people will be crossing over in the near future. It's going to be a time where a lot of people will be leaving the planet. And he explained to me that this is all in perfect divine timing because first of all, we need to have people leaving the planet. It's just too many. And that what it's going to create is there's going to be so many people on the other side that we're going to have so much more access to that dimension. And all of us in this dimension are going to be able to easily communicate with people on the other side. And they're there to help us. They're there to, like, as he's been helping me, be helping us. And we have this synergistic relationship where he said it's like dissolving the veils. Like, we're going to be so much more in tune with each other. He said, it's like this, Elena, I'm just here and you're on vacation and you're going to come back from vacation at some point and we'll be together again. But in the meantime, enjoy yourself. Please have a good vacation. And
that's a wonderful way to look at that. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much, Elaine. Really, thank you.
Thank you. You guys are amazing.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now and Beyond, featuring spiritual medium and master teacher James Van Praagh and spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kelly White.
That was great. Maybe we changed some lives.
And maybe opened up some minds.
Which way do I turn?
Right. I mean left.